how's it going, Bo? Today I want to basically talk to you about how I met your mom. And, most people imagine a walk down a beach and meeting somebody as they're walking out of the water. Then they just lock eyes and they have a moment of realization that something is different about this person. Something basically needs to change in their life. For me, that was a beach here in Puerto Morelos. But I didn't come there to meet anybody. I came there looking for a man named Santos Bonacci who had done a lot of YouTube videos around synchronicity online. That was his emphasis. Synchronicity had sort of been the epicenter of my own personal inquiry for some time. And Santos had many common threads with what I had already found in his online YouTube videos. Like most people who study synchronicity professionally or as a hobby, it's not long before you realize or notice a peculiar reaction from those who've never encountered the subject. It's not immediate, but most of the time there's a tension that's present when just thinking of initiating the conversation. It's so strong, in fact, that most people, when you start talking about it, start checking for the exits. It's pretty bad. Santos was exactly where I found him, right there on the beach. And on July 4th, 2021, he invited me to a temazcal. A temazcal is a sweat lodge ritual that basically it's to induce a spiritual awakening or a change or to invoke a new interest in things of an internal nature or a spiritual nature. I basically accepted because I had interest. I didn't really have any interest in the ritual. I had done temazcals before, sweat lodges before, and found them extraordinarily unpleasant. And it wasn't for me. But I wanted to hear a little bit about his interpretations on numerical synchronicities. Did everything I could to invoke that, to say, hey, you tell me what the numbers mean. I want to hear your interpretation of that. I'd already heard all the other interpretations from angel numbers, gematria, the idea that it was a form of spiritual awakening itself, that these are mortal gifts from a higher realm of consciousness, or even blessings from a god or gods. And up until 2016, I was happy being a devout atheist, son. I did not care that there was a God or if the God didn't exist at all. I just looked at, we are all random dust particles floating around in space, and that's fine with me. But right after I got back from my last deployment to Afghanistan, I decided that working for the United States Air Force full time was not my dream anymore. And too much bureaucracy, along with not enough honor or integrity, and too many people lying, is basically when I decided to render my last salute, and I headed west. I ended up in Portland, but before I settled down there for a few years, I made a quick trip to Colorado Springs, and then by Christmas, I was in Buenos Aires for New Year's. This was the beginning of these events. I knew something was different and something was a little off with reality. The numbers started appearing slow at first, and then after a month, they were everywhere. And I wasn't looking for them. I started seeing them on receipts, license plates, phone numbers, billboards. I saw them in ads. I saw them on mileages. I saw them, basically everywhere. And when I went to ask people about what it was, they were like, oh yeah, it's this synchronicity thing. I'm like, well, what's the point of it? And that's when I sort of got the concept that no one knows. So I went on my own little research adventure. Now, I know you're probably asking, what does this have to do with your mom? Well, living with this level of insight, you have to engage with one overarching idea. Do things happen randomly, or do they happen on purpose? And if they do happen on purpose, whose purpose? Are you just a plaything that somebody is puppeteering, or someone is this a curse? Or are you an NPC that has, NPC stands for non-player character that's already pre-programmed to act certain ways. But I feel like if that's the scenario, I'm basically a program that's challenging its own programming. Totally could be. But the atheist in me would say it's just all random. We infer relevancy. It's our human intellect that processes the world. However, someone who's experiencing synchronistic influence has to contend with the sheer impossibility for the number of occurrences. Basically, it's like this. If it happens once, it's a coincidence. If it happens twice, that is the beginning of a pattern. If it happens 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, those are points that can be plotted, tracked, and you can actually infer information. No different than the information that you are receiving from me in the pattern of English that's being taught to you right now. I just want you to understand that the frustrating part about synchronistic events is there's no current agreed upon scientific model that accounts for the origin of synchronicity. It only is able to be experienced in real time by the person who's experiencing it. The ability to grab someone within that experience and pull them into it is frustrating, annoying, and difficult for both parties. Much like the feeling of eating gelato in Venice while the sun sets. It's just hard to explain no matter how many words you use. Synchronicity is a stark sensation unique to its own self, almost as if it was an additional sense to the 5 senses you were born. So you have touch, taste, smell, you have these. But when this comes on, it's sort of like the difference between being the 3-year-old and being the 12-year-old. As a 3-year-old, you definitely look at fun, play, and pleasure completely different than the 12-year-old who is coming through the finales of puberty, where the same person that you were playing with at 3 you're looking at them in a completely different way due to the sensations, urges that are going on at that pubescent stage. Now, when Santos introduced me to your mother on July 4th as another attendee to the Temescal, I didn't think anything of it. Other than an immediate physical attraction, there was really nothing special at all. I didn't think that she was anything special. She was just somebody that was there in the group. Later on, when we attended a local vegan restaurant, it was called Layla's. My experiences with Santos just disintegrated, deteriorated. Like I realized that he was much more of a pompous individual. And when I tried to engage with him on the specifics of synchronicity, as it pertained to like manifestation or numbers, he basically simply shrugged it off, and it's almost like he couldn't relate to anything that I was saying. Like he was almost worse than some of the people that I would show them to. Like he would just ignore them, and he just wouldn't even look at them. And I'm going, how can you teach an entire program on synchronicity and syncretism? But from his aspect, synchronicity was the idea of core beliefs in major religions lining up. And so he was like, it was about the universal truth of things, which I didn't have a problem with, but it still didn't account for the numerical synchronicities and what I was experiencing with that. Basically, the next few weeks, I would see him on the beach with his group of 15 or so doing a variety of yoga and stretching. And he said he was there to open their minds to a higher syncretism experience. Whatever it was, it just wasn't for me. And I found that the more I watched him, the more I could see the cracks in who he was. It became obvious that this was just another self-help scam. Your mother was always around. And after like the 3rd or 4th time, she and I decided to go to Layla's, where we had our first date. And I basically cut it short. See, the moment she told me that she was still in this quasi or semi relationship back in Canada, I told her I didn't want to pursue anything with her. But it was during this time that I decided to use my insights around synchronicity to steer the conversation to a topic that I knew could stir up heavy emotions. I told her I was interested in her, but she was off the table. The moment she told me she was working through a relationship, I said I wasn't interested. But it was weird. She changed the topic and asked me about kids. She asked me why I was 40 years old and I didn't have kids. I noticed that her face shifted, and she gave me the response that sort of told me everything. She said that her mother had been divorced from her dad, and that she had never really forgave her mother for that, and that she didn't want to have a child with that type of outcome being the possibility. I told her that I had the exact same fear. That one of the reasons that I was not engaged with looking for a woman, because any woman that would become my wife, there was a massively high potential, according to all the statistics everywhere, that I would lose my child to a scam that is very, very popular in the West today, and that is kidnapping, ransom, basically masqueraded as custody and child support. But when everything's broken down, it fits the dimensions of human trafficking. And we had this conversation basically on our first date. The way that your mom reacted to it, she said, women who do that are whores. And son, I want you to understand, these are her words, not mine. The fact that she did the exact same tactic that has resulted in our relationship being destroyed. One could easily infer that your mom qualifies by her own definition of a whore. But at that time, I sort of accepted that we were on the same level. And I had no intentions of having a child with your mother, but I knew that when it came about, there's gonna have to be a talk. I found that most of your moms just scammers these days, and the idea that most women are just looking for alimony and child support, which, like I said, whore, scumbag behavior. Even though her response conveyed a genuine disgust, she didn't know some of the things that I already knew. Two things were for certain. One was that she was extremely attracted to me. And two, it was an absolute certainty that whatever scenario where she would be presented with a child, that she would purposely sabotage the relationship for her personal benefit. Just the way she described her own situation with her own mother, the potential was all over the place. Even though she was adamant with me vocally and verbally about how she was just so against those types of actions, I could see that the potential was rather high. Regardless, I still chose to trust her. You got to understand, because at this point in my synchronistic journey, I had to begin using instincts along with the awareness of synchronicity. So basically, when a synchronicity would show up, it was a time to pay extra attention to what was going on. And most of the time, I could infer outcomes. See, most people think like I used to be an atheist with an atheist perspective, that we are all a product of randomness. But what if I told you, son, that we are both the product of randomness and the intentions of those random events? See, usually what hurts to think about is that you are the product of other people's randomness. Like you are just bounced around by other people's ideas. Their intentions have effects on you. Just like any interactions from sports to finance, someone is going to walk away with what they were looking for, and the other person is going to walk away empty-handed. So in late January, when your mom told me that she was very pregnant, and that it was beyond a doubt, I remember staring up at her at the bottom of the stairs while she was holding the pregnancy test. And I only said one thing. I said these specific words: "You know how I feel about this." And I was referring to our original conversation about women running off with children. And that is why, without me saying anything further, she responded with her very first lie: "I promise I won't steal your child." And she repeated that promise basically all the way up until the week she took you, son. The same week that she took you, she said, even though we had broken up and we were living separately, she had told me over and over and over again that nothing was going to change with the schedule. Nothing was going to change with how we had set the same things up. The sad part is I could infer using synchronistic insights that this had a high potential outcome of her running off with you, because synchronicities aren't just about numbers. It's about being honest with reality. And when someone isn't as they appear, I can usually suss that out. See, I've been able to use this to not just see things that have high potentials, but even change future events based off of those perceptions. Now, it's taken some time, but I've gotten really good at it. Actually, there are some things that I could change quite easily. And there's other things that no matter how many times I focus on it, I can't change at all. But in the following videos and the series of this, I'm going to show you a method that I've been working on for years. And it's yielded extraordinary results. But the one thing that I've been after the most hasn't really moved a micrometer, and that is trying to reestablish a daily connection with you. No matter how hard I search for a better method to ensure that our father-son relationship is restored, there's been only one path that leads to that future, and that's why I'm here in Thailand. That's why I left. See, if I could, I would have put you on the plane on the seat right next to me. I said this in the last video that I sent your mom. Despite all of my honorable efforts and intentions, the simple truth is that without sacrifice, there's no victory. You know I more love you, son. And I know that when we see each other again, it will be amazing. It will be glorious. I can't wait to see you. I need to see you. You know, I wanted to contact you yesterday. And I sent your mom a message saying, hey, I'm willing to talk whenever you're, available. So I want you to know that my advice for you, son, is to absolutely challenge your mother. Remind her consistently that she's got some crazy issues and that she's bonkers. You know, you are talented. I can see your talents. I can sense them. And I'm fascinated by your clear objectives towards art and music. We'll sit and even when we did have time together, son, it's like all we do is sit around and play with music, play with toys, go goof off, which is what you're supposed to be doing. I'm not going to say that I had anything to do with ruining that. Your mother absolutely, with the assistance of the pimp style legal system that is so pervasive, it is everywhere, but especially in Mexico at a rate of 94%. Of men lose their children to these types of crimes because these are not legal. They are fake. This idea of using false accusations to pretend that women are in danger so that you can steal money from men is what makes your mom, in her own words, a whore. Your mother has a future that awaits her. It will find her the same way I found my, first ex-wife. But that's a story I alluded to before, and it's also a story worth diving into a little bit deeper on another occasion. I have a weird name, and I was born with the name August Jerome Day. I have found that I have a deep connection to those names and to the history that surrounds those names. And I study that amongst many other things that I want to share with you because I absolutely more love you. All right, buddy, that's enough for today. I just ran into a guy. He's from Australia. Tell him how I came here. I almost broke down, knowing that it's 9 o'clock at night on Saturday for Bowden, and just miss him so much. But this feeling of this is the only way we can do this. We can't keep playing this nonsensical game of legal musical chairs so that people can make money off the situation. This is a father and his son. It is diabolical that people would make money off of this. I really wish that the fleas of 1,000 camels will infest every crevice of anyone who is involved in this. I know that sounds like a really horrible thing, or an odd thing even, but I cannot think of the amount of pain that would be sufficient enough to rip a child away from somebody so you can make money. But yeah, the Aussie guy was asking me about how long it's been, and just right here in the throat, just trying to talk about it. It sucks. But when you have this type of pressure and frustration, I want to document, so it's like these are the outlets. This is where you come. This is where you say, hey, you know what? I know that this is mental pain. This is emotional pain, but through perseverance and hard work and strength, you can make the stronger mind. And I want my son to learn these things. And I know it's imperative for him to. I've actually watched so many people lose their lives to suicide over and over and over again because they didn't keep a steady, disciplined mind on the focus to build a bigger, better mind. And here's the thing, it's like I went through one of the worst scenarios just in the last week, and then one of the most brutal workouts I've had in the last 6 months boxing. And so my body is wrecked. And so my mind is still trying to deal with that pressure on top of dealing with I've got sore hamstrings and I've got sore muscles, and I still want to come in here and get a focused workout in, so that my son knows that it's like, no, I'm not just walking around like Superman, and I'm not just the best person because I'm gifted. It's like this takes hard work and effort to maintain it 100% of the time. And yeah, it's important. It's important. I miss you so much, Brogan. And you're never going to get anything but authenticity from me. I'll never want to be fake with you ever. And when I'm struggling, you need to know that there are ways to deal with that. This is one of them. There are many more. And I can't wait to teach you to you. Miss you, bud.